Greetings and welcome to another special edition of It's Not Work, It's Fun, featuring Master Gardener Bernie DeLaunay. And now that September is here, Bernie's got to tell you what you're supposed to be doing about this time of year. So let's find out what tips are coming our way today.
Hello. Yeah, it's time for another edition of It's Not Work, It's Fun. I actually have a lot of fall questions I'm supposed to answer today. I don't know if I'm going to get to all of them, but I'm going to try. But before we do that, you know what we got to do? We got to go for a spot. So stay right there. We'll come right back.
All right, the show is coming to you from the gardening capital of the world. I bet you didn't know that, but you know it now. All right, the Murphys are back in business at 51 and NN. They got a little restaurant there and a post office and stuff. So stop by and say hi. Good friends of ours. We got the It's Not Work, It's Fun email address, but more importantly, we flash the P.O. box on the screen 5 times on the show. Jot down that number and your questions can be answered by Bernie on television. One more time, stop by and say hi to our friends the Murphys, 51 and NN. The road construction is getting better now. Genesis Design Service, a longtime sponsor of this program and believer. Okay, that's enough out of me, so let's see what Bernie can tell us. Ajal-we. Bye-bye.
Well, first of all, we have some pretty nice fall look at colors in here. Some flowers, some artificial plants that are normally in the studio. And some things that you're going to harvest in the summertime. Well, towards the end of the summer, like late summer to summer. I have a beefsteak tomato here and a cherry tomato. And then, of course, here's a lemon right here. A lot of people don't harvest those in north central Wisconsin. I have some lobelia right here, some marigolds. And one of the things that people want me to talk about is how to make your own insecticide. I've done many demonstrations on that over the years, and I've brought different plants in where you can make your own insecticide from those things. I'm not going to do that demonstration today, but one of the things I am going to do is I've got a 3-in-1 spray here, which I think I had in the studio earlier this summertime. Let's see if we can get a good shot of that. And I want to talk about that. Now, if you have houseplants outside, somebody said, well, what do you do if you get houseplants outside? And again, this show is for not only advanced gardeners, but beginning gardeners as well. Let's see if we can get a better, there we go, that's a pretty good shot. Anyway, this is not to say go out and buy this particular brand. You can buy any brand you want. This is called a 3-in-1. This one is called a rose guard. You can use it on any houseplant. You can use it on any shrub, any tree, anything. And you don't necessarily have to buy it just to use it on roses. But what it contains is an insecticide, a fungicide, and a miticide. And what that means is it kills anything crawling, slithering, jumping, hopping, walking, flying, any virus, fungal disease, any bacterial disease that gets in there. And what you should do is take your houseplants. This is a root from a spathia lily right here. Let's get a good shot of this one, Andy, if we could, please. And I have a few other things growing in there too, as it's a large pot. This is just starting to grow in. There's some brown things, just like dead leaves on here. And as you can see, it's starting to grow in right here. And I'm going to let that grow inside. It's a root from a spathia lily. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to grow a plant from a root rather than the seed or an established plant that I cut off from a parent plant. And they grow very slowly, but in the wintertime, it'll start growing fast. Down around Christmas time, it'll slow down, and then right after Christmas time, it'll speed up. And some of this stuff is going to be underneath the lights inside again. And what people wanted to know is when you take your house plants in, should you spray them down? Yes, you should, absolutely. You need to spray everything down so that you don't bring those things inside. And this is a pretty good spray to do that with. Now, I don't want to get that on the tomato because I want to wash that later. This stuff kind of smells a little bit. It's not too bad. It's not nearly as bad as some of the other sprays that people can buy. You don't want to spray your stuff inside. You want to spray it outside. A lot of times what people will do is they'll get a great big huge container and they'll put it in a 5 or 2 gallon bucket of water, and they'll put the insecticide and stuff in there, and then they'll soak the entire plant so that when you bring it inside, you don't get the plants, the spiders and the stuff that tries to winter over, the mites and things like that, and the white fly, the aphids, things like that. You want to spray that down, and trust me, this stuff is good enough so that you can spray it on anything. Now, this right here is a natural insecticide, and what? Oops, I closed her off. Okay, I want to spray that again. And marigold, yes, is a natural insecticide. It contains an ingredient or a drug, or just, it's contained within the plant called, I want to say reticin, but that's not quite right. I'm not pronouncing that right. No, I'll think of it. It's pyrethrin comes from geraniums, and there's another one that comes from chrysanthemums too. But anyway, a lot of these plants, I not only stick a lot of them in my flower beds, and because I have flowers growing all over my property, but I grow them in containers and keep them in small containers so that I can bring them into the studio. And even though this one right here doesn't really look very good, it'll look okay, as a matter of fact. The big plant is actually, I never actually brought it outside. I just left it inside, and I just wanted to see how it's going to grow from root. It established its root. Now it's starting to grow out like this, and all this brown stuff will get covered. Now, what you want to do, if you want to harvest the seeds, take the seeds out of these things first. That's not what you make the insecticide out of. You make insecticide out of the stems and the leaves, and you dry them like you do tea, but don't try to drink this stuff because it'll make you sick. You don't want to do that. And right here is just a regular primula, and it's one that I took a cutting off of way last spring. It was February. Took a very, very, very tiny cutting, and this, I believe, will have red flowers with scented and yellow or gold middles. And I wanted to get some more plants growing for the inside. I have a pretty large shelf that I put things on with lights, and there's some heat and stuff like that. And then what I wanted to do was, I just wanted to make sure that I had some other plants to bring in the studio throughout the wintertime. And the lobelia, I just decided to grow that in a pot because it's a nice flower, and I just decided to bring it in because I had it in some of the hanging baskets. I grew a whole bunch of it. I had it in hanging baskets. And what you can do a lot of times is, if you have flowers like this, you might want to take a little bit of this, put it in a small 4-inch pot, and just grow it on a windowsill. Cut it all back, cut everything off, cut it way down, give it some fertilizer, and then let it sit in a cool, dry place for a couple of days. And then you can slowly but surely, over the next several weeks, push it towards the window. Now, a lot of people ask me about geraniums every year. I didn't bring any geraniums this year because I've brought them in so many times. That's a pelargonium is another one that you can actually get insecticide out of. And I'm going to go back to the 3-in-1 spray in just a minute because it's a really good all-around spray. But what you can do, if you bring the houseplants in, they're going to have stuff in them. You want to spray them down. And if you put an entire plant, say right your marigold right here, okay? If you want to bring that whole thing in and soak it in a big bucket of water, just leave it in there. Just make sure the whole thing gets soaked. Just dunk the whole thing in there. Leave it in there for a good 20 minutes to half hour. Some of the soil will come out, but that's all right. You can put more soil in there. A lot of people will take the time to take the soil off the plant, dunk the whole plant, and then put the soil on it like an aluminum pie tin and sterilize it by cooking it on a grill outside. You actually can sterilize your soil by cooking it on a grill. That's another thing you can do in the fall, besides harvest things like beefsteak tomatoes and cherry tomatoes. And this, okay, let's get a real good shot of this. This is a lemon, and of course it's a citrus fruit. And citronella is something that comes from citrus fruits. Comes from limes, comes from oranges. Even just a tiny, tiny bit comes from pineapples too, but pineapples are kind of a different animal than a lemon. And what you want to do is, this is a insect repellent, and this is a lemon that I bought, I just at the regular store. And of course, you know, if you smell it, you kind of rub the skin a little bit. It's going to smell like lemons after a while, okay? So anyway, what you want to do is a lot of times if you don't peel it, if you don't cut it, you can leave a lemon in amongst a grouping of house plants, and it'll repel. It won't kill, but it'll repel insects. Okay, it'll repel mosquitoes. It'll repel whiteflies. It'll repel any kind of mite. Okay, that's what we got in our 3-in-1 spray right here. It's called Rose Guard. Now, do you have to use Rose Guard? No, absolutely not. This 3-in-1 is a pretty good deal because you get 3 different sprays all mixed together in one. So, and what happens is it'll kill a number of things. Now, if you want to mix something like this together, leave the lemons in amongst the house plants, and then spray your plants down too. Well, hey, that's a pretty good idea. It's not so bad. Okay. You can buy any brand of 3-in-1. If you buy just something that says insecticide, okay, pyrethrin, resetrathin, that's what it is, malathion, anything like that, okay, you're not going to kill the funguses that may travel through the air, that may travel, you know, when it's heat activated or wet activated, like when it rains, fungus will splash up and get on the underside of the leaves and then kill the plant that way. Powdery mildew is another. You may not kill it with just something that's marked insecticide. Okay, this will not kill a fungus. There is one thing that's man-made that actually does kill. It's a great fungicide. It's gin. It's a tremendous fungicide. It's gin. You can buy, but it's kind of expensive. Okay, you go buy a bottle of gin, not even a small one, and I think it's going to cost you $3-4. Whereas you get a big bottle of this, it'll cost you the same, and it'll last a little bit longer. Can you make your own? Sure. I've made my own many times. Another really good fungicide that also is a good insecticide, but has to be fresh, is nothing more than fresh beer. Do you want to, a lot of people say, oh, I don't want to waste it on that. I want to drink it. I want to have that stuff go inside me. Well, if it kills insects, what do you think it does when you drink it, you know? I mean, it's going to, you know, it's going to do stuff to your body that it probably shouldn't be doing. Okay, I'm going to move on a little bit here. And a lot of people say, well, geez, you know, if I have diseased plants, like say, for instance, say you got broccoli plants and they're covered with powdery mildew. Should I chop those? You know, should I, you know, you can harvest them. You can, you know, boil the plants, you know, after, you know, the harvest. You can rinse them off in hot water, wash them off. A lot of people soak like cucumbers and broccoli and cabbage in salt water so that you kill anything that might be on them. You peel, you know, you take, you know, cut off whatever's bad. And people say, well, geez, you know, I shouldn't, you know, I shouldn't, you know, if I want to chop up my tomato plants or my broccoli plants or even my sweet pea vines, what do I do if they're infected and I don't want to put them back in my garden? Well, if you don't want to put them back in your garden, say they got powdery mildew on them. No, you don't have to do that. You can throw them away. I don't know if you would take them to the yard waste site. You'll infect everybody else's stuff, or put them in your garbage. I don't know if you want to do that either. A lot of times, the older farmers, and I'm talking about when I was on my grandpa's farm back in Iowa, back in the late 50s and early 60s, we would, if there was something that got infected, we would just burn it. We would burn it in a pit or a burning barrel, and that took care of it too, pretty much. But now, if you what I do is I'll do this for everything. I'll spray down everything. I'll take a big batch. I can make a big batch of insecticide by cutting off my geranium snippings, my marigolds. I'll put it in a 5-gallon bucket of water, cover it over, let it sit for a couple days. I got a natural insecticide, okay? And if I add a little bit of beer or gin, that's a great fungicide too, okay? And then I can spray it on my garden areas, and I do that every year. So if I have some plants, say, for instance, maybe a pumpkin plant that's got something on it, I can chop it up, I can use it again, as long as I spray it. If you don't spray it, you're going to affect your other plants, okay? So what's going to happen is if you use the stuff that is infected, and this is one of the questions, that without spraying it, yeah, you can transfer that disease or that virus or that fungus over to another garden or into the same garden over and over again. You don't want to do that. If you want to get rid of the plant, that's fine. If you spray it like I do, that's fine too. Just remember that if you don't get rid of it, it will come back the next year. It will follow you around and your other plants will get infected, okay? Now, there are plants that get activated by a wet spell, rain, lots of dew in the morning. What do you do about that? You have to spray, okay? You have to spray, okay? And a lot of people, this isn't really the safest way to do this, but a lot of farmers way back when, they would burn all their crops. They would actually set the field on fire, and that would kill a lot of things. Heat activated things would get too hot and it would burn them out, okay? Now, sometimes there are viruses that get into the soil that don't get burnt out by burning a field. This is a farmer's practice that goes way, way back. This is hundreds of years old, where they would burn it in the fall. They'd turn it over and they'd set the soil on fire again. They'd put, I don't know, maybe straw. They'd put sometimes animal dung, manure on there, and they'd set that on fire. Sometimes they'd use kerosene, or they'd burn up, I don't know, maybe their brush, their, tree stumps, things like that. And that would help to burn up the stuff. The hotter you can get it, the hotter, the better it is. You got to be really careful doing that stuff. Plus, if you have houses around you, that's not really a good idea. Is it a good idea to spray everything? No, not always. No. If you use a natural insecticide, like if you make it from your marigolds, something like this, then it's a little bit better than the synthetic ones. It's not going to give you nearly the health problems as if you were to go out and buy this stuff. That's why I say you don't do it inside. You do it outside in a well-ventilated area. You don't smoke with it. You don't mix any other things except for water. If you do mix things together, you got to dilute them first and pour the diluted solutions with water into it. You always use water as your dilution. You got to have a lot of real safety measures in place here. Okay, another thing is that when this lemon, here, let's get a good shot of this. When the lemon, if it hasn't been treated, if they don't treat it with the stuff that makes the seeds sterile on the inside, when this thing gets kind of past this day, cut it open, take the seeds out, plant them. Get a little citrus tree growing for yourself, okay? You can do that with you can do it with orange, you can do it with grapefruit, you can do it with lemons, you can do it with limes, you can do it with tangelos, anything like that. Tangerines, unless they have sprayed it or hybridized it so that the seeds will remain sterile and not germinate. That's what they did with all kinds of avocado seeds, millions of them. They hybridized them so that people can't grow avocado trees from the seeds anymore. And that is because that stuff is all backfiring too. And the reason is because some of the seeds don't take, and they germinate anyway. And a lot of the farmers, they tried that with sweet corn about 4 or 5 years ago. There's an idea that actually came into play about 30 years ago. And they wanted to try that so that you had to buy all brand new seed every single year. You couldn't save your own seed. And so the seed companies thought, we're going to make a killing. We're going to control the markets. We're going to do all kinds of stuff. And it backfired because the hybridization techniques didn't take hold. They failed, and they also started producing inedible sweet corn, which they didn't plan on, but it happened anyway. And then, of course, the farmers, said, hey, we're not going to put up with this crap. We're going to grow our own stuff. We're going to keep our own seed anyway. We're going to keep the old stock that we have. We're going to grow the seed, and we're going to make sure that we harvest our own seed, and we're not going to buy it. We're not going to pay those prices. They were going to regulate the market. They were going to make sure that if you wanted to plant sweet corn, the price would be way, way higher than it normally would be. And everybody said, not a good idea. They're fooling around with Mother Nature. Mother Nature won't be fooled with. We cannot control her. A lot of people have tried. It doesn't work. It fails every time. And they did control the market with the avocado seeds. However, there's so many people that are fighting against that. that they don't want to put up with that. They don't want to be controlled that way. So there's a certain amount of things like avocados and sweet corn and even cantaloupe and even potatoes that they won't let they won't let those seeds go into somebody else's market. They'll keep them and they'll keep growing them from seed, okay? Now, I have yet to find one avocado that I buy in the store that actually I can get a seed to germinate from. I've tried it dozens of times, and they have that one down, okay? But then the price of avocados goes way, way up, and they're not selling anyway. People aren't going to pay those kind of prices. So it's backfiring anyway. In the long run, it's always going to backfire. Another thing is that one of the questions is that someone asked me, well, can you pick your pumpkins early, even if they're not orange? Will they turn orange? Yes, they will. They won't turn orange. Well, the only thing is that they won't turn a really, if they don't ripen on the vine, they may turn a yellow orange and not get real orange, like pie pumpkins. Sometimes they're very orange and sometimes they're yellow. Well, the thing is that you have to watch for the last frost. You have to make sure that if you're going to save plants and you're not going to pick them, you got to cover them up with a blanket. Some people cover them up with old jackets and tile, like floor tiles, old rugs, things like that. Cover them up with anything that's going to keep the heat from it. Big, huge piece of black plastic that's folded over that creates some heat is another way of doing that. However, if it gets really cold and you want to save like really tender peppers, not green peppers. I'm not talking about bell peppers, but like the hot peppers and eggplants. You actually have to cover those up with blankets. They've got to be like really, really covered over with blankets. Okay, now a lot of people say, well, geez, this is okay. Well, yeah, let's get a good shot of this. This is called a beefsteak tomato. Let's get a good shot of this right here. And this is called a cherry tomato. And I've brought just tons and tons and tons of different kinds of tomatoes in here. We've had pear tomatoes, we've had tomatillos, I've had Roma tomatoes, I've had there's one this is really highly unusual. It's called Bart Lett tomatoes. It's usually people think of Bartlett's Bartlett pear, right? But it's actually pear-shaped. Yellow tomatoes, even white tomatoes and purple tomatoes. And one of the things that these are so easy to grow. If you're a beginner gardener and you buy a started plant and you have relatively good soil, you're going to get tomatoes that are as big as the palm of your hand or bigger. Okay. Let's see. Hold on here. Okay, let's get a good shot of that. This is a pretty good sized tomato, and I think I did get some insecticide there. I think I'll have to wash this off pretty good. Let's get a good shot of this. Usually, cherry tomatoes are a little smaller than this. They can even get a lot bigger than this. Ponderosa beefsteaks. This is not a Ponderosa beefsteak. This is oh gosh, can't even remember what it is now. I started all kinds of. I got so many tomatoes. Okay, so normally cherry tomatoes will be a lot smaller than this, but these got almost a little too big. These are called salad size. And normally, there's popcorn size too. These are very, very easy to grow if you're a beginner gardener. These are one of the easiest things to grow. And yeah, that's a pretty big tomato. Look at the size of this, man. That's a giant against a non-giant, small one. And I heard some of the kids in the neighborhood say the other day, let's go over and smash all her tomatoes. They do that, and I'll know exactly who I'm looking for. If you have trouble with two-legged critters, spray them with this. No, you can't do that. Yeah, spray them with this stuff right here. Nah, you could definitely spray them with a water hose though. Just regular water from a hose if you catch them. And if you have trouble with gophers and things like that, chipmunks, gophers, squirrels, anything that gets in there, you might want to cage everything off so that nothing gets at this. This tomato right here, this is almost a perfect tomato. It's got one little tiny blemish on the, here, let's get another shot of this. One little tiny blemish right here. Okay, that's right there. And then, of course, the top is kind of cracked. Just there's a little tiny crack right there. but it's nice and round. It's really shiny. Just picked this one too, and it's got a really nice orangish, reddish color. It would be almost a perfect tomato. Not quite. And when you see the judges at the fair, okay, and they judge tomatoes and they judge beets and cucumbers and things like that, that's what they look for. They look for the shape. They look for the glossiness of the fruit. They look for, and the blemishes. Is there a crack in there? Is there not a crack in there? Because what a crack indicates in certain tomato varieties, not everyone, is that it didn't get enough water at a certain amount of time in its growing period, and it got too dry. And then other varieties of tomatoes and even other plants, if they get too much water, they will do different things. They'll, like green peppers, for instance, if it gets really, really hot and they don't get enough water, especially in the morning, they will turn prematurely purple and they won't be real big. So that's just characteristics of the plant. Another thing that you'll notice is that this cherry tomato here has a little bit of orange color at the top and red color at the bottom. That's simply because the acidity level changed. Now, a lot of people say, well, geez, how do you know all this stuff about these things? Well, because I just study this stuff over and over and over again. A lot of people will look at this and they'll say, whoa, part of that got frozen and got too cold. No, it didn't. Sometimes people will look at stuff and they'll say, oh, it's because it was too cold. No, this is the acidity level that did not change. And they can do that when we have a drought. Sometimes that will happen with tomatoes where there'll be multicolors. The starch won't turn to a sugar, or in this case, it won't turn to acid. In tomatoes, acid is not in every fruit and vegetable either. Like, you don't want an apple being acid, because that indicates that it was too close to too much acid soil, like maybe too close to pine trees, things like that. Another thing is that if you notice your tomatoes year after year, if you plant them in the same place year after year after year, what will happen is that they won't get as big, the soil will be depleted, and you have to almost change your soil mix every single year. That's why you have to prepare it in the fall and the springtime, because it'll take certain nutrients. Like a carrot will take one nutrient out of the soil, whereas a potato will take something else out of the soil. It might deplete, one vegetable might deplete the soil of potassium, whereas another vegetable might deplete the soil of iron or manganese, okay? And if you don't replenish that, that's why you replenish your soil every spring and every fall. And you only do that by adding rotted maple leaves, grass clippings, a lot of other things. And hear the music, we're out of time. And as everybody knows, I can talk about this stuff all day long. So I hope I answered all your questions. If I didn't get to them, keep asking me questions, keep writing to the P.O. Box. I'm Master Gardener Bernie DeLinea. Until next time, be green, and remember, it's not work, it's fun. Okay, got it. Come on.
It's always fun. All right, well, that was quite a show today, I'll tell you. I could talk about them tomatoes all day long. When I was a younger man, we used to talk about tomatoes, but they weren't the kind you put on salad. Okay, from the gardening capital of the world, the show has come to you one more time. Our friends, the Murphys, are back in business. The road construction is not as bad as it was, so drive on by. We had the email address on the screen and also the P.O. Box at least about 6 times, so jot that number down and send Bernie a note with your areas of plant interest. Genesis Design Service features drafting, engineering, and blueprint services. All right. Gotta get things going here. Some of the technical people who help us out are the following. These things never happen by themselves. It's Not Work, It's Fun is the brainchild of Master Gardener Bernie DeLinea. She really does know all that information, and most of it's inside of her head. Alright, one more time, It's Not Work, It's Fun. This has been a Blue Circle production coming to you from Channel 10. I'm going to take a little slow exit here, and we'll see you later, alligator.